You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans. Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am Jacob Valk, and there's a lot of baseball to talk about. Could have talked about some of this yesterday, but I wanted to keep the baseball talk yesterday solely dedicated to the World Series. But now that over 24 hours have passed, I'm still not over the stupidity that I saw Kevin Cash pull on Tuesday, but B, I can now go over some miscellaneous baseball news. So I'll start with the Arizona Diamondbacks. They declined their team options on Mike Leake, Hector Rondon, and Junior Guerra. Leake, it makes a ton of sense. He did opt out of this season, which every player had the right to do, and it was a good thing that the players had that right. But one of the effects of that is that if you're due a ton of money, Leake had an $18 million option for 2021, there's no way you're getting that picked up. But even then, assuming he had pitched for the Diamondbacks, that probably wouldn't have been picked up. In 10 games for the Diamondbacks in 2019, Leake went 3-3 with a 4.35 ERA. And that's kind of the pitcher that Leake is. He's a solid innings eater. There's really nothing else incredibly special about him. He is a good fielding pitcher. He won a Gold Glove. But the Diamondbacks did the right thing in declining his option. Will he land on his feet? If a team needs an innings eater, they could do a lot worse than going after Mike Leake. Hector Rondon, once upon a time, was a really good closer for the Chicago Cubs. Then they traded for Aroldis Chapman. Look, before this season, he had always been a really good pitcher. His rookie year, he struggled. Okay, fine. But discounting his rookie year and this farce of a season, he never had an ERA higher than 4.24. He is capable of being the closer. I don't mind the Diamondbacks moving on from him, since he did nothing for him, but it wouldn't surprise me if a team gave him a shot on a one-year deal and just said, hey, you know what, we're going to put you in one of our lower leverage roles in the bullpen. It's up to you to prove that you can be that really good closer type again. Junior Guerra's a little surprising to me. This guy started his career as a starter, and he really didn't do much. Then he transitioned over to the bullpen and put it all together. He had a good year for the Diamondbacks, went 1-2 with a 3.04 ERA. The year before, coming out of the pen, 9-5 with a 3.55 ERA, and he pitched in 72 games. Now, fortunately for the Diamondbacks, Guerra is still under team control because he's arbitration eligible. But the Diamondbacks declined a $3.5 million option in favor of buying him out for $100,000. Hopefully whatever he gets in arbitration is going to be less than $3.4 million. Or else Mike Hazen looks pretty foolish. Moving on now to the Washington Nationals and some big names from their World Series run. Not the World Series that just passed, obviously the World Series prior, are no longer on the team. Adam Eaton, Anibal Sanchez, Eric Thames, and Howie Kendrick. Spanky did not have a good season. He only hit .226. Didn't get on base a lot, .285 on base percentage. No power to speak of, only 4 home runs. I mean, I like Eaton a lot. I do think he'll land on his feet, but look. This guy was due $10.5 million in 2021 on his option. You can probably get him for cheaper. Again, I like Eaton a lot. He has a track record of success. Usually hits for a high average, great base runner, good in the field. He'll land on his feet, but this was the right decision to decline his option. Anibal Sanchez was absolutely dreadful for the Nationals this year, went 4-5 with a 6.62 ERA. Was a big part of their World Series winning team. I mean, granted, he laid an egg in the World Series, but that regular season, he was really good. In his one start against the Dodgers, he was really good. In his one start against the Cardinals, he was really good. It was just against the Astros that he laid an egg. Sanchez will land on his feet. Solid innings eater. Former World Series winner. Former ERA title. But yeah, this guy was due $12 million. There's no way you're going to get that when you put up a 6.62 ERA. Eric Thames was absolutely dreadful for the Nationals this year. Hit .200 with only 3 homers and 12 RBIs. Look, Thames is never going to hit for an incredibly high average, but you've got to make up for it with some power. Thames didn't do that. His slugging percentage last year, and I don't really like slugging percentage that much, but I can't go by total home runs. Again, 60-game season. That's unfair to compare to a 162-game season with raw totals. So, I kind of have to go by averages. His slugging percentage last year was .317. His career slugging percentage is .467. It wouldn't surprise me if a National League team brought him in as a bat off the bench, but there was no way that he was gonna go back to the Nationals. Howie Kendrick is a little surprising. This guy was such a key contributor for the 2019 team. Hit .344 with 17 homers and 62 RBIs. Won NLCS MVP. Hit .280 in the World Series. And this year, in limited time, only 25 games, he hit .275. I'll take that. I'll take that any day of the week. You know, the Yankees could stand to add another utility infielder. I do want them to sign Tommy La Stella, but if you don't want Tyler Wade or Tyro Estrada on the team, and if you don't, I don't blame you, Kendrick would make a ton of sense. I don't get this move by the Nationals. That doesn't make sense. He was due $6.5 million. You could have given that to him easily. And Thames was due $4 million, for whatever it's worth. He wasn't worth that, but Kendrick was worth his option. Moving on now to the Mets. They declined their options on Wilson Ramos, Todd Frazier, and Robinson Chirinos. In 2019, Ramos was good for the Mets. Hit .288, 14 homers, 73 RBIs. He caught over 120 games. You can't ask for much more than that. This year, he took a step back. Only hit .239, .297 on base percentage, 5 homers, 15 RBIs. Look, Ramos was due $10 million if the Mets were going to exercise his option. Yeah, you can't do that, especially now with the rumors that the Mets could go after JT Realmuto. That's nothing concrete. There are just people speculating on Twitter that they could go after him. Obviously, Steve Cohen coming in, injecting a bunch of money into that team. They are now instant players for every big free agent. Having said that, though, there is a pretty big obstacle in the way of that sale. Bill de Blasio, the mayor of New York City, has to okay the sale. Basically, Citi Field is on land that's actually a city park. And without getting crazy into it, there is a clause in the lease on Citi Field that gives Mayor de Blasio the power to prevent a sale to a quote-unquote prohibited person. And that isn't just someone who's been convicted of a felony. That's someone who controls an entity that has been convicted of a felony. Steve Cohen used to run a hedge fund called SAC Capital Advisors. That fund pled guilty to insider trading in 2013. They had to pay almost $2 billion in fines. 8 traders from the fund were convicted of insider trading. Cohen reached a deal with the Securities and Exchange Commission where he agreed to a 2-year ban from managing outside money. If you don't live in New York, you may not know this, but Bill de Blasio is one of the worst mayors in the history of New York City. We thought Michael Bloomberg was bad, with the nanny state, stop and frisk. You can't supersize your sodas. He's Rudy Giuliani after 9/11 compared to de Blasio. Think whatever you want about Giuliani now, but right after 9/11, he was America's mayor. Everyone loved him. The biggest thing that de Blasio has done is he's really alienated the NYPD. The cops do not like him. As the mayor of New York City, you need to have the respect of the police. You can think that there's institutional racism in the police all you want. The simple fact is, you're not the mayor of New York City. Bill de Blasio is. He does need to support them. He was once speaking at a funeral for a couple fallen cops. All the cops turned around. They wouldn't look at him. It was incredible. Bill de Blasio has been a terrible mayor for New York City. If he really blocks this sale, which I don't know if he has the right to do or not, but if he does, and if he seriously blocks this sale, he may never be allowed in Queens again. What happens if de Blasio really says, no, you can't sell it to Steve Cohen? Does it go to A-Rod's group? Does it go to the Josh Harris group? Or do the Wilpons say, you know what, forget about it, we're not going to sell anymore? What happens if this drags out to a point where the Mets miss out on all the big free agents? Real Muto, Springer, Bauer, whoever. Because Bill de Blasio blocked this sale. Look, maybe he's just trying to get himself in the paper. He wants people to see his face. He did run for president this year, and his campaign was really doomed from the start. It never got much traction. Maybe this is a way of upping his profile a little bit. But for Mets fans' sakes, and I hate the Mets, I'm saying this as a Mets hater, I really hope this sale goes through for their sake. You cannot have Bill de Blasio stop this sale. That would be incredibly dumb. All the Mets fans would vote against him. He'd lose a lot of support from a lot of people. There's no way he's that dumb. I really think this is just a way to keep his name in the paper. But back to the decisions on these team options. I don't like Todd Frazier. I understand he's good in the locker room, good clubhouse guy, keeps it loose, doesn't take himself too seriously, and he has a good glove, but this guy just doesn't hit for average. He's really feast or famine. I don't like guys like that. In his return to the Mets, Frazier did nothing. Hit .224 with 2 homers and 5 RBIs. It makes a ton of sense to let Frazier walk. And Robinson Chirinos in limited time didn't do much for the Mets. Hit .219. He has a good glove. If you're looking for a backup catcher who's great defensively but won't give you much offensively, you can do a lot worse than Robinson Chirinos, but yeah. It makes perfect sense for the Mets to buy him out. There's no way that he was worth $6.5 million. That was his option. Frazier's was $5.75 million. No way he was worth that. It's very rare that you can say this, but these were the right decisions by Brodie Van Wagenen. Moving on now to a former Mets postseason hero. The Colorado Rockies declined their part of a $12 million mutual option on Daniel Murphy. Look, Murphy has a track record of success. This guy is a 3-time All-Star, MVP runner-up in 2016, 2 Silver Sluggers, NLCS MVP in 2015, killed the Dodgers in the 2016 NLDS, had 6 RBIs in 5 games. he'll land on his feet, but it's the right decision to decline his option. He had 236 for the Rockies, with only 3 homers, 16 RBIs. It wouldn't stun me if the Rockies brought him back, but they can bring him back for less than $12 million. Actually, they're going to have to bring him back for less than $6 million, because they owe him $6 million on the buyout. So, whatever they bring him back for, it can't add up to more than 12 mil when you factor in the $6 million buyout. Moving on now to the Cardinals declining Colton Wong's option. And this is surprising to me. Wong is a solid player. Nothing great, nothing terrible. Good in the field. Good with his legs. Just an all-around good player. He had 265 for the Cardinals. He played in almost every one of their games this year. Look, Wong was due $12.5 million. If the Cardinals can bring him back for less, it makes perfect sense. But if he leaves for another team, the Cardinals are screwed. Red Schoendienst isn't coming back. Tom Herr isn't coming back. This could blow up in the Cardinals' face. This goes back to a point that I made yesterday. They may not know how to evaluate their own players. Hopefully, for their sake, they can bring Wong back at a cheaper rate. Moving on now to the Twins declining their $5 million option on Sergio Romo. And I don't like this. Romo has always been a really, really good reliever. Had a couple seasons where he closed for the Giants, was really good, made an all-star team in 2013. Closed for the Rays in 2018, the Marlins in 2019. Even closed out a few games for the Twins last year. He went 1-2 with a 4.05 ERA. That's good. If I'm a team in need of a reliever, yeah, give me Sergio Romo. This guy has won 3 World Series. Would bring a strong veteran presence. This guy has never given up a run in the World Series. And in the NLCS, he's only given up 1 run. You may be asking about the ALCS. He's never pitched in the ALCS. The only time he made the American League portion of the playoffs was with the Twins. 2019, they lost to the Yankees in the ALDS. And this year, they lost to the Astros in the wildcard round. There's no question in my mind that Sergio Romo is going to land on his feet. A really good team is going to value his veteran presence. I can promise you that. Moving on now to the Mariners re-signing Kendall Graveman. Yesterday, they declined his $3.5 million team option, but they brought him back today on a deal that gives him a $1.25 million base salary and $2.5 million in incentives. So if Graveman hits all those incentives, he'll get more than $3.5 million. Truthfully, I was in favor of the Mariners cutting ties with Graveman. I don't like Graveman that much. I don't think he's a good pitcher. Best case scenario, he's a 4 starter, but he's never been able to stay healthy. Since 2018, he's only pitched in 18 games. In those 18 games, he went 2-8 with a 6.96 ERA. Last year, he went 1-3 with a 5.79 ERA. This guy isn't that good. It's just that simple. I don't know why the Mariners are wasting their time with this guy. They will be able to get better pitchers. I don't like this move. Alright, now I'll give you some Valk talk about the NFL. According to Aaron Wilson of the Houston Chronicle, the Texans have fielded phone calls about Will Fuller and Randall Cobb. So trading DeAndre Hopkins wasn't enough. They want to trade Fuller and Cobb. Look, the Texans have a lot of solid wide receivers. Fuller, Cobb, Brandon Cooks, Kenny Stills, Kiki Cutie. It makes a ton of sense to deal from your surplus. I'll even throw DeAndre Carter in there also. That's 6 wide receivers. Look, the Texans aren't going to do anything this year. They're 1-6. Some people have even speculated that J.J. Watt could be traded. I'm not the biggest Watt fan in the world, but man, I'll tell you, the blowback you would get for that would be insane. You would need a massive haul to make that worth it. And some people even speculated that Deshaun Watson could be traded. Every team in the NFL should be after Deshaun Watson. It would make a ton of sense for the Texans to trade Fuller and Cobb. It would clear up their wide receiver depth chart. They'd get some solid draft picks while not losing a lot of production. I understand the Texans are 1-6. They don't care about production that much. But just think about it. You can trade these 2 really good wide receivers. And you have guys waiting in the wings that will give you similar stats. They've both caught 30 passes this year. They both have over 370 receiving yards. They've both caught multiple touchdowns. Cobb has 2. Fuller has 5. For both of these guys, assuming they go to separate teams, it wouldn't surprise me if the Texans got a 3rd rounder for both of them. So they could end up with 2 extra 3rd rounders while not losing a lot in terms of production, because you have such a stacked wide receiver depth chart. Seems like a no-brainer to me. But now it's time to preview tonight's Thursday night game, Falcons versus Panthers. The Falcons are a tough team to get a handle on. They should be so much better than 1-6. They have Matt Ryan, they have Todd Gurley, they have Julio Jones. They lost on Sunday in the most incredible of ways. Todd Gurley tries like hell to stop himself from scoring, to run more time off the clock. And then the Lions are able to drive down the field and win by 1. The Falcons just keep inventing ways to lose. It's incredible. But they're so talented. Ryan, Gurley, Jones, Calvin Ridley, Russell Gage, Hayden Hurst. Their offensive line, with the exception of left guard, is insane. James Carpenter has not done a good job for him this year, but Jake Matthews, Alex Mack, Chris Lindstrom and Caleb McGarry have. The Falcons have done a really good job of putting together this young, really good offensive line. It's just a shame that their front seven is garbage. Outside of Grady Jarrett, who's one of the best defensive linemen in the NFL, and without question, one of the most underrated ones, their front seven really doesn't scare me. Deion Jones and Foyesade Oluokun are solid, but they're not great. Steven Means is dreadful. Tyler Davison is dreadful. Dante Fowler has been a massive disappointment. Alan Bailey has been dreadful. There's no question about it. That's the Falcons' Achilles heel. Their secondary is good. AJ Terrell looks like he's going to be a solid corner in this league for a long time. I wasn't crazy about him coming out of Clemson. I thought he was built like a pencil. But Nick got it right. Give him credit. Isaiah Oliver is solid. Keanu Neal is solid. Ricardo Allen's a really good tackler. The Falcons are dealing with a couple big injuries in their secondary. Both Darqueze Dennard and DeMonte Kazee are on injured reserve. But their secondary is solid. It's just their front seven that loses them a bunch of games. And this is going back a few seasons, by the way. Dan Quinn sold himself as this defensive guru. He wasn't able to whip that front seven into shape. But when you look at the Panthers, you've got to give them credit for what they've been able to do. Teddy Bridgewater, when I watch him play, I see a lot of Chad Pennington in him. Safe with the football, doesn't make a ton of mistakes. He has a better arm than Pennington ever did, and it's what caused Robbie Anderson to have this career season. Man, I wish he was still a Jet. Not saying he'd have the same production if he was still with the Jets, but he'd be a million times better than Brashad Perryman. I mean, they're a fun team to watch. Even without McCaffrey. McCaffrey's been hurt since week 2. The Panthers are 3-4. Mike Davis has stepped up and has played pretty well. Nothing spectacular, but he's getting 4 yards a carry. He has the second most catches out of any Panther this year. You can't ask for much more than that. And one other skill position guy who should be mentioned is DJ Moore. 24th overall pick by the Panthers in 2018. This guy is one of the most underrated wide receivers in the NFL. Had over 1,100 receiving yards last year. Raise your hand if you knew that. Yeah, I didn't think so. This year he's caught 31 passes for 567 yards and 3 touchdowns. That's 18.3 yards a catch. Matt Rule has done a solid job so far with the Panthers. I understand it's only 7 games. We still need to wait and see to truly evaluate how well he made the jump from Baylor to the pros. But so far, he's doing a good job. I'll tell you, he'd be a million times better than Joe Judge and Adam Gase. More so Judge, because what's happening with the Giants is more on Judge than what's happening with the Jets being on Gase, if that makes any sense. My point is, Judge is more responsible for the Giants' failures than Gase is for the Jets' failures. That's what I'm trying to say. The funny thing about the Panthers is that they really don't have a good offensive line. They have Russell Okung, they have Matt Paredes, and they have Taylor Moton. But the other 2/5 of their offensive line is garbage. John Miller only has a 59.3 overall grade according to Pro Football Focus. Chris Reed is, without question, the worst pass blocker I've ever seen. And in run blocking, he's not much better. His overall grade is 44.8. And also, Russell Okung is doubtful for this game with a calf injury. His backup is Greg Little. He's not gonna get the job done. This offensive line scares me. Defensively, the Panthers are incredibly well-rounded. Brian Burr, Zach Kerr, Dante Jackson, Rasul Douglas, Corn Elder, F.A. Obata, Yetur Gross-Matos. They've got a lot of talent on that defense. But again, they have injury concerns. Douglas is on the COVID-19 list. Gross-Matos got hurt. There was a chance that McCaffrey could play tonight. He's not going to. The Panthers have talent. They've just gotten really unlucky when it comes to injuries. But all in all, I think Rule, Bridgewater, Anderson, and Moore are going to be able to take advantage of the really shaky Falcons front seven. You're going to see a lot of short to medium passes. You may see a few deep bombs here and there since you have Robbie Anderson, but I don't think it'll be anything crazy. Give me the Panthers. Alright, I'll give you a little Valk talk about the NBA. Specifically, Stephen Silas being hired as the head coach for the Rockets, beating out Jeff Van Gundy and John Lucas. Those guys were the 3 finalists. Silas got the job. I don't know how serious Van Gundy was. I mean, I find it hard to believe that if Jeff Van Gundy really said to the Rockets, hey, I want to come back and coach you guys again, they'd have turned him down, but hey, Silas has the job. This hire makes a ton of sense. Silas has been in the NBA since 1999. His father, Paul, was an NBA coach for 32 years. He actually used to be an assistant coach for the Nets. But that's not how people remember him. People remember him as LeBron James's first NBA head coach. He was with the then Charlotte Bobcats when they went through that dismal 7-59 season. He coached the Hornets for a while. He coached the San Diego Clippers for a while. Players liked playing for him. And I'm sure Stephen Silas saw that, and he'll know how to relate to these players. I think he'll be able to get along with James Harden. I think he'll be able to get along with Russell Westbrook. This guy has waited a long time to get a shot. He's been bouncing around multiple teams since 1999. Was with the Hornets, then the Cavs, then the Wizards, then the Warriors, back to the Hornets. Then he went to the Mavericks. This guy has a really good reputation in this league. I like the fact that his father was around the NBA for such a long time. It wouldn't surprise me if Paul Silas took on some responsibility on his son's staff, whether it's as an assistant coach or an informal advisor. You could do a lot worse than having Paul Silas in your ear. I understand he wasn't a great coach, but still, the guy was around the NBA for over 30 years. That does mean something. This is a solid hire for the Rockets. Would I prefer Jeff Van Gundy? Absolutely. But I don't mind them going with this incredibly qualified former assistant coach. Until tomorrow, I am Jacob Valk saying that on my last vacation, I mostly stayed around the house, but I did take a hunting trip to one of those Canadian proverbs.